Good morning. Well, I just want to put to you a couple of cases where the low traffic neighbourhoods seem to have gone wrong because of feedback I've been getting from the taxi drivers and other people, businessmen, businesswomen. One is in the area where TfL is putting in cycle lanes on Euston Road, so that's narrowing the road space for other vehicles, and that's next door to some of these low neighbourhood schemes which have been putting in by the local councils. Camden Council, for example, I think have blocked off one of the entrances from south, the neighbourhood south of Euston Road, onto Euston Road itself. And I'm hearing there's immense amounts of congestion in the Euston Road area. Simply because you've got two things happening at the same time. TfL are doing something to reduce road space, and then Camden Council are doing something to reduce access to the same road space. This is something that isn't working. What can you do, or what will you do to rectify the situation around Euston Road?
So the Euston Road is only. I've come back to one of the points I made earlier, David, is that we need, but all respect to Martin and Tony's former colleague, the evidence shows that traffic isn't like water. There's human decision here. And I think we need to let some of these schemes bed in a little bit and understand it. There's a full monitoring and evaluation sort of process going in on some of these bigger schemes like Euston Road, so we can manage to change that if and when we need to. I do think, there seems to, I like you, I get a lot of correspondence from various different people. I think I get a balance of people who really like some of this stuff and really, really object to some of this stuff. And I imagine all of you as Assembly members get similar sort of levels of correspondence. Some of the sort of more, certainly some of them, you get irate correspondence on both sides, of both ends of the spectrum. And I'm sure you'll all be aware of that. But I know some of the sort of, there's a lot of concerns, Euston's only just gone in, but Park Lane, for example, has been in for a bit longer, where I've got a lot of things saying, there's gridlock now, or it's bringing out. Actually, I did ask TfL to look at what the timings are for journeys, and I think the journeys on Park Lane are only 40 seconds longer on average than on that section. But actually, as part of a longer journey, from Vauxhall Bridge to Marble Arch, for example, along Park Lane takes exactly the same time as it did pre-lockdown. So it is let's let these bed in. If there are problems with them, we are monitoring it, and we can change them. As we said, they're temporary. But I do want to give these enough time to bed in so that people can adapt to them.
Well, you're sort of comparing two different things there that might be different, because traffic pre-lockdown is much greater in general and in total than now. So if the traffic levels in the whole of London get back up to pre-lockdown levels, I think that the congestion on Park Lane, as you say, is not going to be 40 seconds longer. It's going to be an awful lot longer than that. But that wasn't what I wanted to ask you about. You might want to come back on that. But the other thing I did want to ask, the second thing, the last thing, is, again, I'm getting a lot of correspondence from people living in some of the inner London boroughs, like Tower Hamlets, like Islington, like Hackney, where it's not just car users that are being affected. I understand you want people to get out of private cars and walk and cycle, but it's business owners who have to make deliveries, it's emergency vehicles, it's taxis who need to go to places and pick up and drop off disabled people. And they don't have some of the access that they would do. So you've really got to think about those people. What would you say to business owners who perhaps do a business in one of these new low traffic neighbourhoods, and then find, because they've only got one way out of the neighbourhood, 2 or 3 of their access points have been cut off, that their delivery times are taking a lot longer, and that's actually affecting their business. When that happens, what will you do to actually rectify the situation so that businesses don't suffer, for example?
I'll sort of come back to two things on that. One is that the way that the low traffic neighbourhoods are designed is not to prevent access. It might restrict access into some areas and change some of the way that people get around in that. But it certainly isn't to stop access. We're working very closely with the emergency services, and that's why we're putting in some of the cameras approach to enforcement, rather than just blocking off all the streets using bollards, so that does enable the emergency services to go through. In terms of businesses specifically, I would say 2 things. One is that I've been talking to freight organisations and other businesses through the business improvement districts and understanding this. And I know that they share my concern, is that it's not just that traffic might go back to pre-lockdown levels, which I want to avoid. My worry is it goes back to far more than that. And if we get that shift of journeys to people who were previously using public transport to private cars, we've seen this in Asian cities as they come out of COVID. If that happens, it's going to be bad for everybody. The deliveries and the freight, the essential freight and those essential journeys that keep London thriving is going to get stuck in gridlock. And we're seeing this in other cities. That's why we're trying to enable as many of those people who can walk and cycle to walk and cycle for their journeys, to free up the space on the roads and on the public transport system to use those if they can't. So I know, I'm not a fanatic. I know not every journey can be walked or cycled. You know, you do need to have deliveries. You do need to. Many people can't do that. But we need to make as many of those people who can do those journeys as possible to do that, because the last thing businesses I've spoken to want is gridlock or air quality problems that put people off coming into the central London or worry about that. The third point is that learning again from low traffic neighbourhoods that we already have, where we have delivered these things, what we've seen for businesses is an increase in footfall in their shops, an increase in spend in their shops. So, and where we've done these studies, and these are not done by me or TfL, actually, they're done by university. I know Nicole could probably comment far better than I. She's far better qualified than me on this stuff. But we've seen 40% more spend, or 40% more footfall, 30% more spend, if I remember my figures correctly. So while there's obviously a lot of people are anxious around change, and change on the transport system always creates a very emotive approach, what we have seen once these things people get used to them is actually this is good for business. This is good for business by preventing lockdown, but it's also good for business in terms of encouraging footfall and spend on the high street, which is, I think, something we all need to be seeing as we come out of this crisis and the perils of the economic sort of dark clouds that are looming for everyone in London.
Well, with respect, Will, I don't have too much time to go. I know we've got to move on, but I do wonder, you know, the studies you talk about businesses having increased footfall and increased spending in their shops. That's not what I'm hearing from some of the people who have to do deliveries, and their sort of access is blocked off in some of these low traffic neighbourhoods. But yeah, I think
I'm really happy to share the data, because I know every study that has been done either here or abroad has shown that same pattern. So I'm really happy to share some of that with you, David, if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, but also, you know, it's maybe that was data from before the lockdown, before the COVID-19 situation, and so what's happening now might be different. So, but it would be good if you could send that to me so I could have a look.